Hey there, I am back with another deck review, and today I'm going to be looking at Walhalla playing cards from Riesen Design and Finnish designer Julian Riesen. This is a deck that was released on Kickstarter and pays homage to Norse mythology. I'm a big sucker for mythology decks, and I don't have one that really goes after Nordic mythology, so this was a really cool one to add to the collection. In a nutshell, Nordic mythology is kind of the story of two different clans of gods, the Aesir and the Vanir. The two of them fought a long war, and after they finally tired of the war, they actually joined into a single clan. Walhalla is the hall in heaven, essentially, where Odin, the supreme all-father of the gods, rules over, and it's where all of the worthy warriors are brought after they die in battle. So that's the story of the deck and kind of what it's all about. And this really is a celebration of the pantheon of gods that make up Norse mythology. So let's jump into it, find out what it's all about. First off, comes in 3 different versions of the deck. The original Kickstarter campaign had these 2 versions here, came in a nice silver and black sleeve here that fit the 2 decks. But this is the Odin version of the deck, the standard version, if you will. And this is the Freya version, which is the limited edition of the deck. So 2 different versions that came in the original campaign. And then very, very late in the campaign, it hit a stretch goal, which unlocked a 3rd deck, the Deck of the Valkyries. Now, because it hit late in the campaign, they actually ended up releasing this one as its own independent campaign that funded separately. But all 3 of them were produced and shipped together. So you got the 3 different versions of the deck, but let's take a look at it. And we'll start with the standard version right here. All right, so the standard version is a really striking, bright orange and silver foiled, along with some red foil, really bright and heavily embossed design. Has Walhalla in fairly small font, almost looks like runes up there, and then 54 playing cards at the bottom. And then the center design is sort of this kind of reminiscent of like an ice crystal, and then has in the center that little snowflake there. And this is where you get the heaviest embossing with those lines there. Very, very thick. Love the embossing on this. And then the orange background is kind of striped with red foil, and then you get the red foil border, and then finishes out with silver foil right to the edge of the deck. So really beautiful front. Love how bright and vibrant it is as well. Turning the sides, you've got Walhalla written on one side and on the other. Ad copy for Julian Riesen, as well as NPCC, who printed the deck out of Ukraine. And then the back here is going to be the back design of the cards that we'll look at more in a second, but it is nicely embossed. And you get a custom postage stamp style text seal denoting Odin, the other namesake of this version of the deck. And you see an image of Odin there. Inner flap, just a little bit more of that orange, red, and silver design. And the interior you have printed in silver foil, just a bunch of different runes, and they're printed all the way down. Pretty cool on that orange tuck. So that is the tuck case. Not bad at all. But let's look at the cards. We'll start with the back design. So another continuation to that orange. Looks a little bit more red here compared to the tuck case, but it's oranges, different shades from the lighter all the way to the much darker orange that makes up the lines. You have that just a very stark orange with very thin red stripes, or dark orange stripes is the background. And then another one of those sort of ice crystal structures with a snowflake in the center. And then just a really nice thin white poker border around the edge. So nice, really, really bright. I think the kind of field in the back's a little bit empty for my taste. I would have liked a little bit more detail in there, but all in all, not a bad back design. The 2 jokers you get, you can kind of see a little sample of the art style that we're going to see throughout the deck. So you've got 2 jokers that both depict the first of the different gods that we're going to look at that are part of the mythology. This is Loki. If you've watched the Marvel movies, you've seen Loki as the villain there, and in the mythology, he plays kind of a similar role. He's that mischievous trickster god, and is also responsible for kind of causing a lot of mischief or even harm and death to some of the other gods. You can see him depicted here in kind of this fun one-legged stance, and he's holding a serpent, which is one of the symbols of Loki that's very commonly used. You have 2 different colors, one that's more blues and then the other one that's more reds and oranges. So you got the blue and the orange Joker, and then more of that crystal structure in the background. There's your 2 Jokers. You also get a couple of gaff cards, double backer, and a blank facer. Always nice to get some gaff cards. Now, looking at the number cards, you don't have, strictly speaking, a power ace, or maybe more accurately, all 4 of the aces are power aces. So you're going to get a large representation of the pip with the crystals in the background. And you can see that kind of shades of orange and almost red colors to that heart pip in the center. I love that they put the pip and the index on all 4 corners. I think it really makes it a more functional deck, just because you can fan it from both directions. You know, if you're left-handed and you fan this way, you can still see all 4 corners of the deck. But you have a little custom font and a really small representation of the pip there in the corner. Going through the number cards, also kind of unique here. So you do get those custom pips, but it's cool how they did these, right? Because they put in basically an array of 13 of the pip, but they only color in the ones that represent the rank of the card. Meaning on this one, 10 of the 13 are colored in, and then as you go to the 9, only 9 are colored in, but all 13 are still there. The others are just kind of in a more faint outline. I think it's a pretty cool way to do the pips, and certainly on this deck, still very, very recognizable and readable, and looking at the ones in the center. But a cool custom layout of the numbers there. The black cards, very similar design, but now more in like blacks and grays. You can kind of see a little closer look at that one. But very similar style, same theme to the pips on the number cards as well. And then there's your diamonds, again, very similar style. And into the spades. And there are those. So more of the same, kind of depending on the angle, almost looks a little bit purple, depending on how you look at it. So that's the number cards, but really with any mythological based deck, really the court cards are going to be where it's at, because this is where you're going to really get this chance to see the gods expressed. And so each one of the court cards is going to be one of the different gods, very similar art style to what we were looking at before, kind of a fun, almost cartoonish style. I will say for me, this looks a little bit like, I don't know, I would call it Riffle Shuffle taking on Third Way Industries. It's a really bizarre combination. Riffle Shuffle does a lot of fun, more lighthearted decks. And then Giovanni over at Third Way does these heavy mythological based decks with lots of symbolism. So this is kind of combining elements of both of those styles in my mind. So the first set of cards we're going to look at are the spades. And so this represents Bragi over here, the god of poetry, Hel, the goddess of the underworld in the center there, and then Odin, the all-father and supreme leader of the Aesir. You'll see them all with kind of different elements that kind of denote them as gods. So the god of poetry has this musical instrument here at his side as he's kind of using that in telling his poems. Hel, the goddess of the underworld, she's got that kind of skull staff in her hands, and Odin is always recognizable by his one eye. According to legend, he sacrificed his other eye in order to see the cosmos more clearly. One of the other cool things about these two-way courts is that they're not actually fully reflected. The images are very similar, but in kind of a fun game, if you will, there's going to be slight differences. In fact, exactly 3 differences from the top to the bottom. And it's kind of a fun little game to figure out what they are. And I'll show them here on the Bragi Jack of Spades. You'll see, like, on this one, his hand, he's got all of his fingers curled in, but on the other side, he's got 1 finger out. Or here, the instrument has 5 strings versus 6 strings on this side. And then you'll see as the third difference, the tip of his beard there is slightly different style from one side to the other. So kind of fun to pick them up as you go through card by card. They're not meaningful or significant differences in any way, but just something fun to play around with. Now, going to the diamonds rather, you have 3 more of the gods. You've got Heimdall, one of the sons of Odin, and one of the guardians of Asgard, where the gods lived. So he sits on the rainbow bridge called Bifrost that connects them. And you can see his famous horn, Gjallarhorn, that he uses to warn others of invaders and things like that. So Gjallarhorn in his hand, and that's how you recognize him as Heimdall. The Queen of Diamonds is Frigg, who is Odin's wife, noted for her beauty and power of divination. And the King of Diamonds is another one of Odin's sons, Balder, who is believed to be immortal, but apparently he had a weakness of mistletoe. of all things. And so that was something that Loki exploited in killing off Balder. It was one of his schemes. Turning to the clubs, so 3 more of these. So the Jack of Clubs is Njordr, who's a god associated with sea and fishing. You can see that with that large hook in his hand there, and almost kind of a scale-like pattern on his outfit there. The Queen is Skadi, who's a goddess associated with skiing and with winter. So you'll often see her depicted sitting on skis, but she's kind of in her more winter visage there. So a lot of like blues and greens used on her outfit. And then the King of Clubs is Freyr. Freyr is the god of fertility and led the Vanir clan before it ultimately merged with the Aesir and Odin's clan. And then turning to the last set, you've got the Hearts. 3 more, kind of back to a lot more bright reds. Jack of Hearts, this is one of my favorite ones. This is Tyr. And you can see here he's got one hand that's completely cut off. The story is that he sacrificed that arm to the wolf Fenrir while the gods were fighting him. And so because of the sacrifice of his arm, the gods were able to bind the animal during their battle. So there's Tyr. Freya, who lends her name to the second deck that we're going to look at. Freya is the Queen of Hearts, a very sensual and passionate goddess associated with love, fertility, and beauty. And then last but not least is arguably the most famous of the Norse gods because of his tie with Marvel Comics. This is Thor, the god of thunder. And of course, he's got this hammer Mjolnir in his hand along with a little lightning bolt at the top. So that is Thor. So very cool look at the different gods of the pantheon. As far as handling, I would say the deck handles okay. You can fan them fine. Takes a little bit more work. They're a little bit clumpier, I think, than compared to like a Cardamundi or a USBCC deck. But they fan and handle okay. Definitely a little bit of a thicker stock to them, but nothing too bad on that one. So that is the first of the 3 decks. But before we wrap up with final thoughts, I want to give you guys a chance to see the other 2 decks. So let's get some of this cleared away. All right, now that we're finished with the Odin deck, let's go to the other deck from the original Kickstarter, and that's this one. This is the Freya deck. Now, very similar art elements to it, but it is completely recolored. So where the other one was orange with red, this one's black and red. Really like the contrast of the red with the black. I think that's always a great color combination. I personally prefer the brighter colors of the original, of the Odin deck, but this one's nice too. So you've got the same design that you looked at with the other one, but now it's done with red foil and black foil against a black matte stock case. Same design elements all the way through. You see they're all completely recolored, and you get a new postage stamp style seal here, this time recognizing Freya as the goddess here. This one is individually numbered, so I've got number 643 of the run there. So otherwise, very similar design to what we looked at before. I like the look of the red runes on the inside too. I think that's a great look. The cards have all been completely recolored as well, starting with the back design. So this time now, instead of the orange, really kind of in your face, this one makes use of just gold metallic colors and a little bit of white against a black card background. So really nice looking. Love the use of metallics for sure on this one. I will say, where I talked about how stark that background looks, I think in this one it looks even more stark, if that's possible. Not a huge fan of all that empty space, but I do like a good metallic ink. And I think against the black background, it does look nice. Now, I will caveat that those black cards really have a tendency to chip on the edges. And I will say right out of the box, these and the deck of the Valkyries we'll look at in a second, both suffered a little bit from that. But there's the back design. And the cards themselves have been recolored as well. So whereas before, all the gods of the Pantheon were in all different colors, this time we're just using gold and silver metallic inks. Really beautiful against the black, I will say. You can definitely see some of that chipping there that I was talking about. But it almost gives it kind of the gold almost comes across looking like sepia, and the silver almost like a black and white look. So really interesting contrast with those. Flipping through the rest, you can kind of see how those come out. All the quartz are also done up in those kind of sepia looking tones. So not bad. And then here's what the kind of number cards look like. I will say on this one, just because it's metallic inks, it's hard to capture, but depending on the angle you hold it, if the light hits it wrong, it can be a lot harder to read which pips are colored in. I don't know if you're kind of catching that as I turn that into the light. But if the light hits that wrong and you get the wrong reflection, it's really hard to see what pips are lit up. Definitely not as obvious on this one as it was with the previous deck. But that gold does look nice, I gotta say. And then here's what some of the silvers look like. You definitely get that black and white feel to the quartz there. And more of the same throughout the rest of the deck. So not gonna go card by card. So that is the limited edition version of the deck. While this is nominally the rarer of the two decks, I gotta say I like the Odin deck a good bit better. I think the back design looked nicer. I like the color on the court cards. The orange of the tuck case, really a lot more striking. But not a bad companion deck to the Odin. So there's the Freya deck. The last and final deck I'm going to take a look at is the deck of the Valkyries. The Valkyries were the handmaidens of Odin who picked the warriors who were worthy to come to Walhalla. So a really cool inspiration for the deck. On the face of it, very similar to the one we just looked at, but now instead of red foil, you have this vibrant holographic foil, which is really, really nice. Otherwise, same designs all the way through. I love how that holographic foil looks against the black. It's a really striking look. Definitely feel a lot more the emptiness of the design on this one, a lot more of that negative space compared to the other one. But the holographic foil is nice. And you do get a gray Valkyrie postage stamp style seal, also individually numbered. This one's number 644. Opening up with the cards themselves, you get a really plain almost looking back design to the card. So it's just black and white and a much simpler design on face. You just have a few simple elements with that snowflake in the middle and then the black card background. But one of the cool elements of this is if you have a black light, you can shine it on here and bring up some different elements. I don't know how well that's showing up, but there you go. You can see more of that background and texturing that's done in kind of an invisible ink that shows up under a black light. So kind of a cool touch. I will say for me, maybe I don't have the strongest of black lights or something, but it's not super easy to see. Maybe I just need a brighter black light, but doesn't shine quite as much as maybe I hoped it would. That said, it's a pretty cool reveal. I just wish that the card looked better without the black light, but not bad. Turning to the cards themselves, we have a ton of color. And I'll start here. You can see with the Jokers, makes heavy use of neon inks. So almost a cartoonish amount of neon ink that's used. And if you break out your black light again, you'll be able to really get some kind of cool glowing effects in the background, including a few more invisible ink elements that show up. You'll see there, nothing there, and you get that design pop out. Now, interestingly, on my particular deck, I don't know if this is on all of them, I actually had a little bit of almost an error on the other one. So if I shine the black light on my red Joker, there's no background or invisible ink, whereas there is on the blue Joker. Not sure if that was an intentional design decision, but wish they kind of matched the two of them. If it was an error, wish they'd done that. So here's the rest of the deck, and the court cards are going to be done up in really, really vibrant colors, really bright neons, and colors that are going to glow again under that black light. So even though I'm in a well-lit room, you can kind of see how brightly some of those colors pop out. So very much a neon theme to this whole deck with the kind of pinks for the red cards, and then you switch to blues for the traditionally black cards, and again, more shine, especially in those green parts, really pop out in the black light. So there are your black cards, or your blue cards, if you will. Now remember, if it said those number cards, usually we'd like put all of the pips there. The invisible ink does come into play again, so you'll see those unfilled in pips are still there. They're just there in the invisible ink, so you can see those pop out with the black light. So definitely a deck that by itself doesn't look as good, but if you break out the black light, you can have a lot of fun with this one. I will say the fact that it doesn't look good without the black light definitely holds this one back. And for me, there's definitely a few quality issues on this one, starting with the fact that my two Jokers, one of them didn't seem to have the invisible ink. And I'll say right out of the box, you can see there was some very, very heavy chipping on those black edges of the cards right down the entire corner of the deck. So didn't love that. Definitely not the cleanest of quality on this one. in my mind. That said, it's an interesting addition, if nothing else, to the line. Fun to play around with the black light, not necessarily as nice looking of a deck without the black light, you know, right from the start with that just plain black and white background. So that's that one. Now, all that said, what do we think of the deck overall? I love the theme of going after Norse mythology. I think the design of the courts, maybe not for everybody, but I did enjoy them. I thought they were a fun design. I thought all three decks kind of brought something a little bit different. Without a doubt, the orange, the Odin deck was by far my favorite of them. I think they kind of got worse as they went along. So while I think it was kind of cool that they went with different elements rather than just a really simple recoloring, kind of went with some different elements with bringing in the black light and the metallic inks, I think it just got less successful, certainly as the decks went along, even though there was some creativity in there. Wish it had been printed too with like Cardamundi or USPCC, certainly would have helped with the handling. That said, it's still a pretty functional deck, definitely still easy enough to use for gameplay. Probably not the deck you're going to use for your magic routine or anything like that. And definitely doesn't handle quite well enough for what you'd want for cardistry. You'll want one printed by one of the big guys instead. So it really kind of makes it as an art deck or as a gameplay deck in my mind. So that's it. That is the look at the Walhalla decks. Hope you guys enjoyed. Definitely a little bit longer of a review. A lot of story to get through in 3 different deck designs. But hopefully you enjoyed. Let me know what other decks you want to see in the future. And subscribe for more deck reviews and unboxings. And I'll see you for the next one.